All right, so the final subtopic, I guess. I mean, we've been talking about this. Oh, there we go. You know where I'm going with this, Lance. So after all that is said and done, I don't see any other positions getting addressed here. Again, maybe defensive end, maybe the Bills bring back Micah Hyde. But the one that I think is almost a glaring hole is boundary corner 4. And I know that might not seem that big, but what we saw last year in the playoffs where the Bills were down to Kyer Elam and what was it, Jamarcus Ingram? Like, are we really comfortable rolling with that again? Maybe Dane Jackson played that game, but now Dane's in Carolina. Trey White signed with the Rams. And you could say, well, you replaced Trey White with Russell Douglas. And that is true. But where we finished the season, Trey White was that corner 3, corner 4 on the depth chart. And then after him and Dane signed elsewhere, you're looking at Kyer Elam and Jamarcus Ingram again. And the Bills didn't draft a boundary corner. They did get Daquan Hardy, but he's more of that nickel corner, and he's going to help with special teams. So I think this is one position where the Bills could take, let's just say, $3 to $5 million and sign that boundary corner, because I feel like you would want to get someone who can not only help from a roster standpoint, but I think you want to get someone who can help Kyer Elam, because I think you want to get a running mate for him that is a little bit more experienced than Jamarcus Ingram, because Kyer Elam has faced a lot of flack so far. He's been underwhelming, I guess. I'm still pretty high on him, but considering where the Bills drafted him, they traded up to get him, and now he's not even starting. And he's been circulating around in trade rumors. That's probably more of a social media trade rumor. Like, I don't think he's actually involved in those trade rumors. But the point is, Kyer Elam has not necessarily lived up to that draft hype. And maybe you could say, well, it's a system that the Bills play or whatever. But I think if you get a proven veteran in here to not only help that depth, but he can push Kyer Elam and he can be in his ear and be like, hey, kid, I'll take you under my wing. And I think someone who makes perfect sense for this is Patrick Peterson. Because Patrick Peterson, I don't know, because I don't know what he's asking for, but I can't see him asking for a lot at this point of his career. He's going to be 34 years old. He's definitely seen better days, but I think he still has a lot of juice in the tank. He was a Pro Bowler and an All-Pro in Arizona all those years. Then he went to Minnesota and had 2 really solid years, especially in 2022. He started all 17 games, made 66 tackles, and he picked off 5 passes. And then he started 16 of the 17 games that he played in Pittsburgh last year, and 42 tackles, 2 interceptions. And again, is this guy going to be a top 10 corner in the league? No. But I think for what I said, he will not only provide that depth and competition, but he will also be that experience, that veteran leader that Kyer Elam needs to take him to the next level.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I think that I would go with a guy who's a couple years younger and Steven Nelson maybe versus Peterson, but I definitely, that veteran type, that 30-something-year-old guy who can come in and still contribute when needed, if needed, is a necessity. And it's not to disrespect Jamarcus Ingram and say he couldn't play a role here. It's just a matter of, how much can you trust it? It's like we've just been depleted so far. We ask our defensive backs to come up and hit people so much in this defense that it just takes a toll, and we need more bodies. And I think that's your point, is the brand of football this defense rolls out, and the way the defensive backs have to step in and make plays consistently. Look, we play a 2 linebacker based defense. So if the defensive, you have 5 defensive backs on the field typically anyway, and it's just by chance those guys are going to be the ones making the tackle should the defensive line and linebackers not be able to. So I agree. I think that Patrick Peterson seems more like a name right now than it would be an effective signing, but I'd give it the chance. I'm not going to say no to it. The interesting one would be also hearing the reaction from him and the fan base if Stephon Gilmore was re-signed here and come back to Buffalo after such disrespect when he left Buffalo. I just would wonder how that press conference would go if he was re-signed here. What do you think about Stephon Gilmore reunion?
I'm going to say no, just because we've seen how greedy he's been in the past. And he's always like, show me the money. I'm a top 10 corner. Maybe he knows that he's not one of the best anymore. And you're not going to give him that Leonard Floyd type contract. Like, he's not going to get more than 10 million, is he? I mean,
No,
he might. There
I
might be
wouldn't.
a team that's crazy and throws a bunch of cash at him, but I'm not giving him that much.
Yeah, I wouldn't sign him at all. I just think it would be hilarious to see what that press conference would look like if they did have that. I have no intention of speaking that into existence whatsoever, but I do agree that another body could be added there, and it would probably be beneficial. And Patrick Peterson or Steven Nelson, I think, would fit perfectly with this room.
I'm going to throw a few names out there, a few other names, I should say. I think someone like Xavier Howard could also make a lot of sense because that could be a situation. Like I said, he is that experienced veteran who can be that running mate for Kyer Elam. But the only problem that I have with that is he might want too much money, number one. And number two, he might think he's a couple years younger than Patrick Peterson. And he might say, I'm way better than a corner four. So he might want more playing time. But I think that could be interesting because he does fill the mold that I'm looking for here in this boundary corner. And that could be a case where we say, okay, you took one of our guys in Jordan Poyer. We're going to take one of your guys here in Xavier Howard. So I think that could be interesting, but I don't know. I mean, if we're saying that Stephon Gilmore is going to want to get paid, I think Howard's definitely going to want to get paid as well.
Yeah, I don't see the top guys as much of an option because you're not going to want to pay top end corner money. And Christian Benford has been nothing short of exceptional, I think, for where he was drafted. I think he's done just a fine job, and I don't see a need to try to replace a starter. Like you said, the role is a backup role. If you want to replace Kyer Elam as CB3 and put him at CB4 and give a guy that spot, fine. Kyer's working his tail off to earn more than that and to live up to the first round pick that he was, but hasn't shown it quite yet. And hopefully this season he can show us and that he's turned the corner and stuff. And I had him on the Buffalo Blitz when Peter and I were doing that on Tuesdays, and I've been with him at different charity events along with Stevie Johnson. I think that he's a great young man. He's got a great head on his shoulders, and he's going to keep working. But that doesn't necessarily translate to being a starting caliber football player in the NFL. So we'll have to see how that all works out and shakes out. I think, again, saying this training camp is going to be exceptional to watch some of these guys compete for a job and for certain roles on this team.
Well, a few other names that I'm going to throw out there that I think could make sense. Cameron Sutton is available, but I think that he's a really good corner and he's going to want too much money. So to the points that we already
Starter,
made,
yeah.
JC Jackson, Adoree Jackson, they're also listed up there. I just don't think that it makes sense financially. So I think here are three names that the Bills could go after to provide that depth and be that running mate for Kyer Elam. Akella Witherspoon, who is 29 years old, most recently played with the Rams. Chandon Sullivan, he's going to be 28 in a few months, most recently played with the Steelers. And Trey Herndon, 28 years old from Jacksonville. He's been there since 2018. I believe he was an undrafted free agent. And I think Trey Herndon could be that perfect depth corner. He plays special teams, and I think he would have a role. And the one last point that I'm going to make here is that a Sean McDermott defense it's crucial that they have the defensive backs to really get this defense going. Maybe I shouldn't say that it starts on the outside, like everything starts up front, but I think it's very important that you have defensive backs, specifically corners, who know what they're doing. And that's why I think that the Bills could still go get someone, because if they want depth and competition for just about every position, like you said, this is no disrespect on Jamarcus Ingram. It's just that if you wanted depth and competition for, let's just say, Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis last year, then I can't see the Bills saying, nah, we're good with Jamarcus Ingram. Like, if you're trying to get depth and competition for someone like Stephon Diggs or Von Miller, then I think you're going to want to get that competition for Jamarcus Ingram.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to have competition that's going to give us the best chance at success throughout this season. With so much of a younger roster now, adding key veterans at these positions where you can help these guys along. I like the Trey Herndon idea a lot. That's a good name to to put in the mix here.
Walter says here, I don't agree that Elam isn't a starting caliber cornerback. Does anybody really think that? So, I mean, that is kind of polarizing because I'm under the impression that Elam's not going to start, right? Unless there's an injury. You have Rasul Douglas and Christian Benford. But I think that he is corner 3 because they want to work with him, especially with the new corners coach here in Jamil Adai. And I think they're not going to give up on him yet. And I think he starts as corner 3. But if you get someone like Patrick Peterson, then if Peterson outperforms him, like the Bills will not be scared to say, okay, Elam, you're back to corner 4 because Patrick Peterson's outperforming you. I think that the mindset here, the goal, the idea behind the Patrick Peterson idea is that he would start as corner 4 and try to push Kaiir Elam to continuing to grow and develop. But if he's not pushing him and if Elam's not responding, then I think Peterson is still definitely a good enough player to take over as corner 3 and essentially demote Kaiir Elam. But I think that's what you want because we might have made this point already, but if you sign someone like a Stephon Gilmore or an Xavier Howard, that would essentially block that growth and development from Elam. And I don't know if the Bills want to do that. I think that's the reason why they didn't draft a corner. You know, for as much as people are saying, oh, are they going to draft Cooper DeJean? I'm like, how can you draft a first-round corner? Because that means you're essentially giving up on Elam. So that's why I think we're going to see a mid to bottom tier addition here. But I think corner is definitely a position to look out for this weekend and beyond.